Today, I'm happy to introduce Noah Zanden, the CEO of Quantified AI, a customizable AI avatar role-play simulation with analytics, certifications, and personalized feedback that drives team performance with both a video and audio avatar. This podcast is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, where you can find education on how to use AI in your individual role and GTM teams. Find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and more. Let's jump in. Welcome, everyone, to another yet podcast episode of GTM AI Podcast. I am here with Noah. So excited. He and I connected a few months ago about his product Quantified, which I'm going to have him dive into more. But he has been a great resource for me. I've been watching his LinkedIn posts for a while. I love his mindset and his experience. And so I knew that one of the people I wanted to interview on the podcast series was Noah. So if you don't mind, give us an introduction about yourself, a little history on it, and why you're doing Quantified. Tell us the story.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you having me here and excited to talk about go-to-market and AI today.
Good.
My background's a little unique. I'm a bit of a reformed quant. So I started my career on Wall Street, worked at Lehman Brothers and Deutsche Bank, and then took a job doing private equity out on the West Coast. And about a decade in, I started to get worried about myself, Jonathan, and that I would never graduate from Microsoft Excel. I was really, really good at quantitative analysis and wasn't really asked to do much else beyond that. And kind of said, is this really what I want for the rest of my career? Like doing these financial models and analysis, and maybe I would enjoy like interacting with people a little bit more and having a job that requires those skills. I hadn't developed any of those skills. And so, I was like, how do I learn how to be more conversational and present this work? And maybe if I can figure that out, I'll up level in my own career.
Right.
And so, I started thinking about behavioral coaching and kind of feedback and learning by doing, really as a result of kind of a selfish need to unlock the next level of growth in my own career. And that was sort of the groundswell that started what Quantified is today. And that's the origin story.
That's the origin story. So how long have you been around? How long did you start?
So we actually started with the research we do. We have about a decade of research under our belt of, what makes an effective conversation? How do you help unlock better interactions between people and their target customer or target audience? But we started Quantified AI in 2020. What we saw when sales went online during COVID was there was an opportunity to start capturing a lot more digital behavior, which is what's required for us to give people feedback at scale. So the Quantified solution for improving go-to-market teams started in 2020.
So curious, because I'm an AI nerd, so I'm going to ask you some questions. Is it based on your own AI model, or are you leveraging another tech like OpenAI, or how does the back end work?
Yeah, so we built our own model. We started building our own model. We've been working on that, literally started investing in it in, I think, 2012. So we start building it, and then my VP of product and AI walks up to me one day and says, Noah, you really should look at this. It's called GPT-2. And I've been playing with it a little bit, and I think we should start paying attention to this. And I was just like, whoa. I pulled in our head of sales at the time, and I was like, uh-oh, right? Like this thing is coming, and this thing is really good. Even then, right, you could see the promise and the pace. And we had to sit there and have this debate, Jonathan, of like, okay, we have a decade of model training. We have invested millions of dollars to stand up our own intelligence based upon, smart machine learning, predictive modeling. But there's this new model that's, at the time, sort of off the shelf that looks like it's going to absolutely outperform our model in sort of an untrained environment. What do we do?
And then, so you adopted it since then?
We did a big team offsite. We all went out to Santa Fe and we sat down and really debated it, right? We were reading Tony Fadell's book, Build, which is such a good book about sort of building products. And we sat down and said, what do we want to do? Like, we have something proprietary, we have something unique, we have something competitively differentiated, but there's this new technology that, GPT-2 is still pretty early, right? This is a year before ChatGPT comes out. There's this new stuff. And, do we think we can serve our customers better based on the new technology? And pretty unanimously, everyone on my team was game to adopt more of sort of an LLM-driven approach and think about how to productize it. Not, it's sort of, the AI is so fundamental to our business that it wasn't like, let's slap a chat on or something like that, which a lot of companies were doing at the time. Like, it was like, okay, why don't we try building some of our models and our feedback on top of this because it is so powerful as an inference tool. And we could be seeing a true paradigm shift here that we don't want to fall behind.
Right. So with the current models is so describe someone who has never experienced your tech. It's a role play AI avatar that's video and audio and interacts with someone based on a certain situation. Right? Did I describe that correctly? What I miss? I want to make
You
sure I
did,
hit.
right? I mean,
Okay.
I always talk about it like it's, role play.
Yeah.
Role play works. Talk to any sales leader, sales enablement, sales coach, sales manager, even sales reps, and they all will tell you that role play in practice works. It makes people better. And
Right.
then they will typically, you ask them what do they think about role play, and they'll give you a four-letter word. Uh, Everyone
That's right.
hates it. Everyone
Yep.
hates it. It's artificial. Managers hate it. Reps hate it. Doesn't work. It's broken. So it works, but everyone hates it. And that's really what we're trying to help on, right? And we're using AI to build something that looks and feels as real as a Zoom call. It's
Mhm.
conversational. It's dynamic, and that allows somebody to have a dynamic conversation, and then immediately after that, get benchmarking, like scoring, feedback, and coaching on what are you doing well, where can you get better, what do top performers at your organization do, so you can get that level of feedback to onboard faster, up level, to perform better. And
Right.
that's the goal of the platform. And it's a simulation environment, right? So it feels very real. And then the coaching is meant to be very personal and very impactful for you.
So in the avatar, I mean, I know I could name off 6 or 7 other tools to do this, but I don't know very many who do the video aspect as well. So
Yep.
asking not from a place of attack, but curiosity, what is the unique parts about Quantified that other places just don't offer as far as the training and the experience and all that good stuff?
Yeah, look, we have a decade of behavioral research, right? So first we're
Yeah.
using that to train our models. So they're trained off of conversations and sales outcomes and actually, making it impactful. Second, one of the things we learned in a decade of behavioral research is nonverbal interaction is really important. So
Yeah.
if I can sit here with my notes and read my notes to you in a dialogue simulator, that's
Right.
not real. That's not going to be like my Zoom call with my prospect in 10 minutes, right? I have to look and I have to interact and I have to reflect based upon what you do. And so nonverbal, the reason we invested a lot in doing video, which is way harder to do than just audio,
Right.
is because we know the importance of nonverbal communication and
So
having that signal. Go ahead.
your tool not only has an avatar for them to interact with, but does it actually is it recording the person's, vocal recognition and facial, like it gives feedback on that as well?
It does.
That's
It does
killer.
because that
That's
is
awesome.
so important. And it's not
Yeah.
just script memorization, right? Like, sure, the basics are message adherence and saying the right thing, but
Right.
saying the right thing and saying it the right way is where the great reps shine. Demonstrating
Right.
listening, demonstrating eye contact, the behavioral mimicry. That's what phenomenal folks do. And we want to unlock that skill set, which frankly, no one else in the market can right now.
So I'm gonna put my enablement hat on for a second, just ask you some questions here. So in without AI, I'd have to have things like, okay, what competencies am I trying to get out of this situation? What's the methodology, the framework, the whatever questions I'm trying to get them, not so much from a script level, but just the model. And then you have the persona, make sure that the persona and the industry knowledge is there. And then all the other stuff they have to have with like MedPick and all the other stuff. So I have that in the back of my mind, I have my brain, I have my stuff here. With your AI tool, is that something that can be duplicated, saying basically, here's your stuff, blap, let's train on it, and then you're in this situation, go.
Yeah.
Is that essentially what happens?
So look, to do this well, right? To build a good sales simulation and coaching tool, you
Yeah.
have to have three components of the platform. One is you got to be able to generate simulation. So I got to be able to take your process, your personas, your talk tracks, all the enablement materials, the stuff you've invested in, and
Yeah.
I've got to ingest that intelligently and quickly without making you do a bunch of extra work. Then I got to build a really good simulation environment, right? The flight simulator has to feel like a real flight.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I also have to have an insights and feedback engine that gives you good coaching that you say, oh, I learned something from that. I'm going to do
Right.
something differently as a result of getting this feedback. So the three components are simulation generation, a good simulation experience, and great insights and feedback. And we have to do all three in order to meet the needs of what you're talking about, which is smart enablement professionals that have all of this existing training material. They want to make that material part of what someone does. They want people practicing it instead of just reading it and going through a quiz. They want
Mhm.
people actually experiencing it, and that's what we do.
I'm writing down notes because you're sparking all sorts of questions now. I'm gonna keep going with it. So with this, we were talking about this earlier before we started, was the whole psychological safety part. So like when you have a rep who's practicing with a CEO in the role play versus their manager versus another rep or whatever, the interaction changes because one, they're all employees, and then two, depending on the authority, will change how you respond, right? I was talking to a friend of mine at a university who was talking about the interaction between us and AI and how people know consciously I'm talking to an AI. So who cares if I mess up or do something stupid because it's not real, right? So I'm curious until we get to the level where we have Iron Man Jarvis literally talking to us like a normal human being, and we have AI where it is now, which is still pretty freaking good. It's just not Jarvis level yet. How do you respond to saying, okay, people know it's not real. How effective really is it? Does that make sense? Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great and a smart question. And
Yeah.
look, AI is not perfect, right? I would be the
Yeah.
first one to tell you that what we have in our AI and our conversational capabilities, it's not real, it's not human. It can answer a question about the weather, but you get in 6 levels deep about the barometric pressure, and it may not be trained on that information yet.
Right.
But what we actually think a lot about when we think about this problem, which we do think about, is what are we actually trying to fix, right?
Right.
So the problem is a lot of people do quote unquote role play with your prospects. So they're learning on the
Right.
job, which is super dangerous and super expensive. And so the existing alternative to that is you're doing it with your manager or potentially with peers. People ask reps to do that, but whether or not it happens, if you really ask, they don't, there's never a great answer. And typically managers are not like doing that in a high quality, consistent way across thousands of reps in a format that really replicates, okay, we're going to role play this persona, now this persona, right? It's like this stuff happens in a very ad hoc fashion.
Right.
And so a lot of when I answer that question, I would say AI is not perfect, but considered next to the alternative, which is hope that this is happening and
Right.
managers not doing it in a high quality way because it's painful. Like AI is much better than that, right? Because we can
Yeah.
make it consistent, we can make it conversational. Like one of the coolest things when I first tested our product, right? When our VP of engineering said, "No, okay, now you get to try it," after me begging and waiting,
Right.
it puts you on the spot, right? You feel the pressure. And like that's what we want to create in our system is you feel that real pressure. And I would argue that people feel the pressure more with an AI that's going to score them and evaluate them with the
Right.
feedback effect than
Right.
they would with their manager, who frankly, like it's an awkward thing and the manager doesn't want to come down really hard on you.
Right.
So the AI doesn't know who you are. It's not that conscious of your feelings about getting feedback. And the last stat I'd give you, Jonathan, is when we had a few customers A/B test us and say how much feedback, how much role play happens with their manager versus how much role play happens with the AI.
Right.
The result was a 6-to-1 ratio. Reps are
Yeah.
6 times more willing to practice with the AI than they are with their manager. It's always on, it's available. You can say, hey, I want to do another one until I get great. And so that's the result we see.
It kind of comes to the whole gamification model too, because then it's not you're just competing against a computer versus you are a person. What's interesting about this is I use another tool where it does reviews after the fact. So it's not a role play tool. It's just more of like reviewing a call afterwards. And I was even using ChatGPT for the sales, teaching some people of how to prompt it to where you could download a transcript and get like a coaching plan based on a call. And so I did one of these and I actually sent it to a rep and I said, "This is not me. This is just AI, just so you know, but here's your feedback from AI." And he was like, "This is like 95% correct." And he loved all of it. And a lot of it was critiques, which is
Yeah.
nice because then it took the whole human relationship pressure out of it, saying, "I'm not telling you you suck. The AI is telling you you suck." But I
And,
agree
and
with
I,
what the
I'd
AI
actually I'd
says,
stop you and say it
So,
doesn't take the human relationship out. It changes the human dynamic
right,
because
right,
then the rep gets this feedback and says, "Hey, Jonathan, will you help me? Like I'm not
right.
doing very well on this. Can you help me with that?" Which, as a
Yeah,
manager, instead of me having to say, "Hey, Noah, you're underperforming in this area, and here's the 6 reasons why," and just break me down, I'm coming with the awareness of where I'm underperforming and saying, "Manager, can you help me?" And that's
yeah.
such a better dynamic.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those things where I think it's more important now for managers and enablement to be the editors slash experts on it. So then when it gets an output, they can say, "I agree with this." Because I don't think it should just be like, okay, whatever AI says is gospel. That's not what it should be. It's more like saying, here's what we're saying. Let's see how accurate it is and how it applies and where we should
Totally.
focus.
Yeah.
But to your point, though, it does totally change it to where the manager, enabler, whoever the coach is no longer looked at as the conversation police trying to tell you what you're doing wrong, but more of like, I'm here to help support you in winning, which I love that.
Yeah.
So question for you, and this is more along lines, again, more for enablement or CROs, RevOps, whoever might be doing a tool like this. The people who might feel, I guess the right word would be afraid that their jobs can be taken away because of tools like this who can replicate themselves. First, like you said, it's almost impossible for one enabler, manager, whoever to do all coaching calls / role plays. It's like impossible to do that. How would you talk to them about? I'm always talking to people about mindset. So not just from your perspective as a tool trying to help with this process, but what would you say to people saying, I'm afraid of AI because it might take away my job that I really enjoy and I like? What would you say to something like that?
Yeah. So we get, I mean, we get this, right? Like we
Yeah.
do in sales conversations, we will talk to really smart sales coaches, sales enablement folks who say, this is this going to take my job?
Yeah.
And the short answer is no, right? I mean, I think that right now AI, like it's good at sort of like low value tasks, like sending more emails, and we're working on higher value tasks like
Yeah.
coaching and feedback. It's going to enable people to do new jobs, right? And to do better jobs of the human job. And like what we are trying to do, Jonathan, our aspiration is to like help people become better versions of themselves. And that goes for the reps, which is going to require a different skill set for enablement, but not replace enablement. I mean, you can kind of go back to like farming, right? Like all the examples of like
Yeah.
farming and machinery is going to take away like the need for us to create food, and it's different, right? These industries evolve, and I think AI is going to fundamentally evolve this. One of the things I would say on this point is I'm also a strong advocate that like AI is not going to create AI sellers. Like people still want to talk to people, right? I
Right.
mean, Qualtrics just did this big study, and like 48% of consumers are concerned that AI will replace a human to connect with because they still want to connect with humans, right?
Right.
So it's like there's this fundamental need of I want someone to help me make sense of this product or this offering or this service, and there's a really human dynamic to that, both from a rep interaction perspective as well as from like the need for human oversight and guidance so people can get better.
Yeah. Until AI buys from AI, I think humans have to be involved at some point. So,
That's
good.
dangerous.
Yeah, we're right. No, no kidding. So shifting gears a little bit from just talking about what we're talking about. I thought a lot about some of the changes coming in AI in general, specifically when it comes to go to market. You kind of talked about some of it saying going from lower level to high level, right? But from your view, in the next year, what's in store for Quantified specifically? And then what do you think is in store for AI in general from your seat? What do you see coming?
Yeah, for us, really, it's a we're working hard on product, right? Like we
Yeah.
are we are working hard to build a product that is as valuable and useful to everyone as possible. There's a lot of AI products out there, and you and I were talking about sort of the
Yeah.
first generation of the sort of like thin veil on top of the LLMs of like, tell me what's in this PDF, and like that.
Hmm.
I think while there's a lot of, oh wow, this is cool, and you discover it, and there's a hype around it, it's not going to fundamentally help someone work better. And frankly, OpenAI is adding that to their feature set so fast that
Right.
the tools aren't that valuable. And so, for us, we want to be fundamental. We want to be valuable. We really, enjoy working with sales teams, smart sales enablement folks and trainers to help them do their jobs better. And that's really where we are digging in over the next year. We're
Yeah.
not going to build our own LLM. Like we are not on the model building side anymore. We are on the product
Yeah.
side of LLMs. And so using the AI intelligently to do as much as we can with it as well. From an industry perspective, right? I mean, I think we are kind of hitting, you'd almost call it Gen 3 of AI tools, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
first one was like simple skins on the model. The next one was a
Right.
lot of like chat and like kind of like synthesis of internal data, like knowledge bots and things like that. And I think number 3 is going to be like true productization enabled by fundamental AI, right? Like Gen 1 of SaaS is like, let's take a spreadsheet and bring it online. Like now,
Right.
Gen 2 of SaaS hopefully is like fundamentally conversational interactive systems that you don't necessarily need to point and click anymore because AI is a new interaction model.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I remember my question. I was going to ask you something else, and it just came to me. So at the Academy for the podcast, I'm always about let's not just talk about tools, let's talk about business impact. So and you can share a specific customer if you want to or not, but I'm curious from the lens of business impacts. So we're talking reduction of costs, increased profit or revenue, or reduce risk. From your point of view, when someone enters in quantified, not just talking about the people are more willing to practice with them, but business results, can you share any like metrics of what you're seeing as far as the lagging metrics that businesses have?
Yeah, sure. So it's a little dangerous. You're asking a data guy a bunch of impact questions, right?
I
So
know,
like
right?
the first thing I'm going to say, and this is true, every sales tech organization has the same brag stats, right?
Right.
Like we improve win rates by 21%. We ramp people 42% faster, right? We can help you, get onboarding tighter, more message adherence. Like, and we have those too, Jonathan. But like the truth is that the truth where you see this data is in behavior change, right? Like that's to me what matters. And if you can actually measure behavioral change, then you've unlocked something. Jerry Farr does a bunch of really good writing about this stuff.
You know,
I'm a big believer that, like, yeah, sure, you want to look at your impact on win rates, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into win rates, right? Like,
right.
you release a new product and you run, quantified in line with that new product release. How much of that attribution model can you run based on quantified versus the new product? So I'm hesitant to go to overclaim what we can do. What I can say is like when we are brought in for specific situations. And so like the three reasons someone hires quantified are: one, they want to onboard someone faster and like
Mhm.
more completely. It's not, can you fill out this quiz at the end of reading a bunch of PowerPoints? It's, are you
Right.
ready to talk to customers? Two is, can you certify people at scale? So a lot of the reasons people bring us in is because they're doing manager certifications or even third-party certifications, and we
Right.
can replace those with AI. So you want to certify 500 reps after a new product release? We can do that very quickly and very consistently, and that works. Number three is up leveling. So what percentage of your reps are high performers? Can we make more people behaviorally look like that cohort? And those are the three things we focus on. We do see onboarding 40% faster. We see a ton of time saved on certifications. That's actually how we look at that one, which is how much faster can you get people certified. So like the certification process that could take a
Yeah.
team of 500 at one example, a team of 500 takes them 2 weeks to get certified. We did it in 24 hours.
That's awesome.
And then number three is up leveling. Can we take, typical organization has 10% of people that are high performers. Can I show you a behavioral model in 2 quarters where 40% of the people exhibit the behaviors of high performers? And we're able to do that.
My question I left pretty open on purpose because I want to see what you thought about it. But essentially, you're saying what I and Jerry and some other people talk about is that technically speaking, enablement doesn't have full control, and really no one does over win rates and close ratios and average deal size and blah blah. Like, but we do have an influence, right? So I always like to look at what is the stuff I actually can measure. So what you're talking about is like music to my ears. My thank you, but it's more than what I on the other side of it though is more like the stuff of like I had 50 people in seats and that was my thing I'm measuring. I'm like, no. We don't want to talk about butts and seats. But we also it's that balance between lagging metrics that you don't have total control of, and then the metrics of like I onboarded 20 people. Great, my grandma can onboard 20 people. Who cares? It's like what's the shift? What's the business impact that this role has impact over or governance over, right? So
Yeah,
I
and
love you pointed that out. It's awesome.
yeah, and we get to talk to smart enablement people all the time. And one of the things
Yeah,
we want to help unlock for people like you is, in the past, a lot of your job is sort of receiving guidance and
yeah,
executing programs, right? Like we need to run a course on discovery, Jonathan. Can we roll that out? Or we've got, this initiative, this new release coming up. Can we do this? And what we want to be able to do is turn that a little bit. If I give you enough data that's good leading indicators of performance, I want you to go to the CRO and say, I'm noticing a gap in this, or we're not
right.
using this message enough. Can we fix this? Can we use, a simulation environment to better train the reps to do this behavior so you can be more proactive in your role as opposed to reactive?
I'm curious, and sorry, I got my brain going now. I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions. We're just gonna roll with it. When you use a tool like conversation intelligence, some kind of Gong, Chorus, whatever, so you
Yep.
have the realities of trackers, whatever else they can have access to, and then you match that to what Quantified has. Is there a world where you see those, not so much your product, but at least the data mixing and saying, okay, here's what's actually happening in real life, and here's what's happening in practice, and find both those gaps of like, here's what practice gaps are, and here's what real life gaps are, and how closely, how close or not close are those? That makes sense, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
question. I kind of call it the closed loop. Look, right now, conversation intelligence, they all claim to do coaching, but what they do is they record calls and they
Right.
send it to a manager and they hope that the manager listens and provides feedback, right? So, like, does it help capture the
Right.
call? Absolutely. Less than 1% of the calls are ever listened to. So they're not great coaching tools because they don't
Right.
make that process much easier other than having a recorded medium. What we want to do is actually integrate intelligently with those systems, pull in the behaviors, the gaps, and then build simulations that actually offer the intervention step that's not
Mm.
happening within those systems. And so that is, for us, that's the full sort of closed loop. Is you do integrate with the call recordings, you grab the behavioral data, you say, hey, Jonathan, your team is, you're failing at this product demo stage. Let's build a simulation for the product demo, and let's train, and let's look at the behavior change, and let's look at the outcome in your sales performance CRM to see
Yep.
if we made an impact. And that's a closed data loop. And that is where we are going.
So you mentioned something, and I may have missed it before earlier. I'm sorry if I did, but so what I heard was, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you use real life calls as part of your training data for simulations. Is that accurate? Is that what I said? Heard?
So we can train simulations right now off of live calls. So you want to roll out
Cool.
a simulation. We love if you have call recordings because that is how your
Yeah.
reps perform. And ideally, you have call recordings of your best reps, and then we can learn what they do and we can build a simulation off of that. We are
Nice.
not we do not currently interact with the conversation intelligence system
Got
other
it.
than to grab call recordings. We will. It's in our roadmap to get there.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of our success right now is in industries that don't record calls for
Oh,
regulated markets, a lot of
right.
certifications, a lot of things like that. And they have less technology, and because they're not allowed to record calls. And
Right.
so a simulator is even more valuable there as a training resource in the training workflow as
Yeah.
opposed to being in the selling workflow.
Yeah, it makes sense. So are they the kind that would be over, I'm just curious, like what industries is that over the phone? Is that over Zoom? They just can't record it? Is that what you're talking about? Or more in person?
So
All of it.
not in person. In person is
Yeah.
a whole nother, like, how do you figure out a device to put into the room that's
Right.
not scary to everybody?
That's
So
the Jarvis hologram thing.
we're not talking in person. We are talking
Yeah.
digital. We are talking financial services and healthcare.
Yeah. Got it.
Regulated markets, recording is not allowed, private conversations. And so they're really, really hungry for training technology because they can't put call recording into place.
Well, that's awesome. I love hearing that, which makes sense because I was once upon a time in a place where we couldn't record either. So trying to help train and analyze what's actually happening real time was like the biggest pain. The only way you could do is
Zero,
mind me
zero visibility, right? Like,
zero.
for
Yeah.
a decade, the only playbook they have is reach and frequency. And
Yeah.
we come along and we're like, well, what about quality? They're like, we love quality. We can't scale
We can't
quality.
track it. Yeah. That's funny. So coming up for you, I know you talked about what you're excited for. Anything you're concerned about, more talking about AI in general with go-to-market, like anything that I wouldn't say worries or troubles, just something you're like, it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. What do you think?
I mean, one of the biggest concerns I have is, right, with AI, there's a lot of different use cases of AI, right? And one of them is obviously
Yeah.
automation. And, like, I get a lot of emails in my inbox, I'm sure you do too, about new sort of outbound tools that automate AI,
Yeah.
make 5,000 calls a minute, right? And so it's like, what concerns me, number one, is that there's some folks thinking about dropping quality and blowing frequency up in order to provide slightly
A little bit
more,
more.
a
Yeah.
little bit more output, right? Not higher conversion, much lower conversion, but a little bit more output. And that
Yeah.
scares me, right? Because there's a human dynamic to high quality sales. We are trying to really invest in that human dynamic, fighting against a current of, we don't want automation, we don't want AI. It automates and ruins it. That
Right.
scares
Yeah. Shifting gears to a more positive note, which I love hearing your thoughts because it's interesting to see the patterns in people's responses because it's like one person said that they're concerned about the outputs people are getting. They'll just accept them as fact without being critical thinkers, you know. You said what you said today. So there's patterns in some of this, which is it's good to hear that people are at least aware of it to make sure we don't let it go too crazy, you know.
me. Yeah.
I have two more questions for you. So one before the last one is for a CRO, RevOps enabler, whoever's looking at a tool like this, or even AI. Let's start AI in general. I've heard a lot of chat just on my side of the fence or on enablement and change management, that kind of stuff of like, how do you even decide what tool to go with? Because there's like a bajillion of them out there and there's more coming out every day. So as an AI CEO, guy, what would you suggest to someone saying, this is how I would go about it if I was going to implement an AI tool? Like what's the steps you would go through to make sure you say, this is the problem, here's what I need, and this is how I'd go identify a solution?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first thing, and like, I'll tell you a quick story. Like in Q1 and Q2 of last year, when it was like max hype cycle, we got a
Yeah.
lot of inbound calls, and they'd say, Noah, we just need to bring AI in. Like we have a board level charter across our massive
Gotta do
organization
AI.
to bring in AI. Can you help us bring in AI? And not surprisingly, like none of those sales conversations really went anywhere for us because
Right.
AI is not the solution, right? I mean, AI is an enabler of better technology. It is a paradigm shift in how we build technology. But, I'd sort of first course correct you, Jonathan, and say it's not about adopting AI for your go-to-market team. It's about what's the problem. Like, what is the performance gap? What is the problem? Is it, do you need better outbound? Do you need better targeting? Do you need better coaching and feedback? Do you need better forecasting? Like, look at the problem absent of AI and then look for the best solutions and look for solutions that hopefully use AI intelligently, like not just a chat that's slapped on your old tool, but like which
Right.
ones are using it intelligently. What I would say is like give the vendors that are fundamentally building on top of the AI a chance. Some of them are really doing really, really cool stuff and rethinking the problem in a very innovative way. So, what we're seeing in the market, not surprisingly, is a lot of consolidation of sales tools.
Right.
But if you have a really specific problem, like there's still point solutions that are very uniquely built for that problem. And I would encourage people, if you identify the problem and you want a solution for it, to consider a point solution as well as look at the wider solutions and see if they smartly use AI.
Yeah, I appreciate the correction. I wasn't intending on saying you have to use AI, but I get people asking this question all the time. Like, how do you know what AI to use? So I love you went back and saying, I say the same thing, like, what's the problem? What are you trying to fix? And then go from that
Yeah.
versus just saying, let's just grab AI and throw it in here. That's not the right answer.
The other thing
Um,
I would say, like seriously, is careful about vendors that overpromise. Right? Some
yeah,
people will promise you in crazy things, right? Like we will 10x your outbound overnight, or you will
yeah,
all of a sudden be able to do perfect role play with every single one of your customers right before the call, and like there's just limits on what people can actually achieve. And unfortunately, we're in a market where there are a lot of over promises, and when you get into the demo phase, you're disappointed by the reality that sits behind the marketing language.
yeah. I love you called out too, the giving people a chance, because a lot of the tools that I've used in the past, I've pushed for, like there's one that I use that it's for a content management system that's AI built. And I pushed it and none of the team knew it. I'm like, I know these guys, I love this tool, let's try it. And they're loving it because of some of the AI capabilities that the other standard top of the market tools don't have. And I was
Yep.
like, I told you. And they're like way cheaper, way better. The customer service was better, like all of it, because they're not this humongous org just trying to capture. They're just hungry startup AI tools. They're just kicking butt, kind of like
Yeah,
yours.
and
So it's
and
like,
and we'll
yeah,
pick up the phone when you call and you say, "I want this feature," and it'll actually get built, right? Because it's
right.
not, okay, where does this feature sit in the stack of our 20,000
All the
customers that
things.
put in feature requests, right?
Yeah. That part I actually love a lot. It's been a lot of fun to do that with some people. But
Yeah.
so I love you called that out. Last question is more kind of generalized, but anything you want to add, share before you leave on any note of any kind, whether about your company or AI.
I mean, I think like I'd probably add with what I'm excited about, right?
Yeah.
So I think AI is really exciting for go-to-market teams for three reasons, John. Right? Number one, like AI can help scale sales impact, right? This is a hard job. Selling is hard. In this economic environment, it is even harder. And there are things fundamentally AI can do to make the job of sales leadership, sales enablement, and rev ops easier. And I'm excited
Yeah.
about that, right? I think it is a fundamentally unlocking technology. I think that the second exciting thing is people are really starting to figure out that AI is not a replacement, it's a teammate, right? This is not here to take your job. It's here to be part of your team, to ride along as a coach, to help you do better at whatever you're doing, but not to replace you. And, number three is like people are fundamentally giving AI a chance to show results. And I think
Yeah.
it's gotten enough market attention that, like, folks like you are putting eyeballs and attention on it and saying, play with it. And you're really helping great professionals like experience it and learn where to start. and it works. Like, it's fundamentally helpful and a paradigm shift in technology. And I think people that figure out how to use it smart will get ahead and stay ahead. And I think that's really exciting. So that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm happy about.
It's a great note to end on, and I love you called it out. So thank you. And Noah, I appreciate connection. Love your stuff on LinkedIn. I will. And besides, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hang out with me for a second and talk AI stuff. It's fun.
No, this is great. I appreciate the work you're doing and all of the innovation you're bringing to smart people that want to adopt it.
Here's hoping, man. I hope so. I think so. Like tools like yours, like I love to see where things are going. Like where it is now, it's the worst it's ever going to be. So when a year from now we're at the Jarvis level and you're now talking about how you have an in-person Jarvis, like I'll be like, sweet, let's do it. That'll be fun.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think about that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.